Well, come on in, kids. Gather round, find your seats. All of you late stragglers in the back of the room, let's get on in here. We've got 3 hours together today. We call it the Matt Murphy Radio Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is Friday. It's August 25, and I'm pleased to be here. We'll be handing off to Brian Wilson at 3 o'clock with The Drive, but until then, much to discuss, and I'm excited because it is a First Amendment Freestyle Friday. We have a veritable cornucopia of topic selections galore on the table today, not the least of which, obviously, the occurrence in Fulton County last evening, and we'll dive into that deeply right as we crank up the show. But we want all of you to gather in on a First Amendment Freestyle Friday as we say hello and pleasantries. It is episode 407 on the broadcast on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. As mentioned, it's the 25th of August. There are a variety of ways for you to communicate with the show, either via the Super Text line or the phone lines. Open phone lines on First Amendment Freestyle Friday, 615-737-9986. You can also email. You can look us up on social media platforms like X. I'm on the Facebook, but generally I have a difficult time. I guess I do the Messenger a pretty good bit. And then there's the obvious other social medias where you can communicate with us. There's Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. Join us there. Evident Bank chat line is up and running, and you can communicate in that way as well. But I like old school ways. I like the telephone lines, and I would love to hear from you at some point today. A stacked show. Jay St. Clair with us at 12:35 today. Note to the one and only Headless Bell, 12:35 today on the show, just after Jay Harper's newscast. Jay St. Clair will be here for a hot 30 minutes. At 1:05 today, Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton will tell us what happened to this special session. Well, I think the Senate happened to the special session. As predicted by me, very few bills passed, no red flag laws considered. The House of Representatives was still doing work. The Senate adjourned until Monday, and I assume the Senate is only coming back because the House hasn't finished up what they have to do. The House is passing legislation that I'm looking over at the Senate, and it doesn't seem like anything's going to happen over there. So I expect that you will see 1, 2, 3. Once again, as predicted by me, a lot of people were declaring that the fix was in. A lot of conservatives in the state of Tennessee were declaring that Bill Lee and Johnson and Sexton had gotten together and they'd struck some sort of backroom deal, which was all nonsense. It was all scare tactics designed to either frighten the hell out of grandma or to get you to donate to their cause. And I don't play that. Homie don't play that. So I called it out. And a lot of people got their panties in a wad because I called it out. But that's okay. That's okay. That's what I'm here for, to act as a reflection and ballast to the community standards in Middle Tennessee. So we have Cameron Sexton to discuss that at 1:05 today. And then I'm rather interested. Last night I did not see it live. Bell K watched it. Headless Bell was actually you were doing some homework for the show last night.
Well, no, I was actually watching the X-Files, and then I'd changed the channel, and I ran across it. And
I tried to hand you the victory.
No, we established earlier before the show that we don't do that. No, but I caught it, and I probably caught the last half of it, and wasn't sure if it was a rerun or not, but it was the actual live debate between Alice and Freddie.
And what did you think?
I thought they both comported themselves very well. I don't agree with most of Freddie's policies, but at least the man came across as sincere and genuine in his personal convictions. And I don't think I'll be going on the air if he becomes mayor and saying, "Oh, that guy lied." I think he's pretty open and honest about, where he wants to take the city. And he does it in a very says it in a very professional manner.
Would you care to, and if you don't want to do that, that's fine, but I don't live in Davidson County. I live in Wilson County. You live in Davidson County.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you figure out last night who you'll be voting for? You don't have to tell me, but I think I can assume.
No, I mean, there's the strong probability that I'll vote for Alice, but I was not, I didn't walk away from that debate with a dislike or a distaste for Freddie. I thought if he ends up becoming mayor, I may not agree with the policies, but I don't foresee myself disliking the way he expresses them or represents the city.
So we will speak with Freddie O'Connell today in studio at 2:05. We'll spend the better part of the last hour of the show talking with Freddie about a variety of issues. If you have any questions for Freddie O'Connell, get them in on the super text line. I'm going to park them in a special folder. I will review them, and I will ask them. I will have a segment of listener questions during our conversation with Freddie O'Connell. Obviously, we're talking about LPRs. Obviously, we're talking about property taxes. Obviously, we're talking about the racetrack and SROs. Obviously, we're talking about the ability to work with the state. All of those things will come up. That's at 2:05 this afternoon, and I can't wait for it. So I want to start off with a bit of good news. You got me some Ann. I need some Ann in my life. That's true. Actually, I didn't check East Nashville, but that might have been. Well, no burning of buildings, but the OD, I don't. Wow, that's not true. That's just empirically not true. Well, we could use good news.
Ann's just a liar.
Ann is a filthy liar. Is Ann Murray dead? No. Jay Harper and Jay, get in here. Jay Harper says no.
That is correct.
I want to recreate. I used to play a game called Dead or Alive with my former radio partner Andrea Lindenberg, and she was the worst person on. Everybody was dead. If they had been out of her field of vision for the last 10 minutes, dead. I mean, seriously, everybody was always dead. So, Jay, you're saying no. Ann Murray is.
Yes, the Canadian songbird is alive and well at 78 years of age.
Oh, well, my goodness gracious. I didn't know that you had an Ann Murray poster at your home, Jay Harper. My apologies.
Hey, man, it's right next to the Barry Manilow.
Yeah, that's pretty barely man enough. Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the Rick Astley. Yes.
Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. So, yes, and I guess I'm going to take Jay Harper's word for it. I'm not even fact-checking him. 78, he knew the age. So, there you go. All right, a little good news. Now, it's not good news that it is 187 degrees outside. And, yeah, it's 187 degrees outside. And if anybody has any thoughts as to how to battle the heat while sitting at Nissan Stadium watching a preseason football game that doesn't mean anything, let me know, because thanks to my buddy Tommy handed me some, electronically gave me some preseason tickets. So here we go.
Yeah, I'm going to be there too, man.
Oh, well, yeah. Look for me, Jay. I'll be the guy in the hat.
Yeah, okay. I'm the guy in the upper section.
I'll wave at you. I don't know where we are. So you're heading off to the. Are you a Titans fan? I would dare say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a season ticket holder, so I guess that qualifies me as a fan.
Well, heck yeah, man. Of course it does. It also qualifies you as my new best friend.
Hey, man, we can hook up for some games.
I would love. I'm planning to. My old team was the Atlanta Falcons, and I immediately tossed them into the trash heap of history because they're so awful, and I took up the Titans as soon as I got into town. So I'm going to enjoy watching at Nissan Stadium the Tennessee Titans rough up my former team later on in the season. That should be a lot of fun. And that's a throwback game, Jay.
Well, I mean, have you got tickets to that game?
I do not yet. No.
Well, I can fix you up, dude.
Ooh, oh, Jay Harper, I love you so much more than Mac Moore. Have I mentioned that? I've always felt that way, and I've always wanted to tell you that. Mm-hmm. That's exactly. Jay, you and I will talk off air. We'll strike some sort of bargain. But yeah, out at the Nissan, if you're planning on going to the preseason game tonight, which is, first game of the season at Nissan, first game of the season for the Titans in town. And so it's got a lot of football fans excited. I'm excited as well. We'll be out there, and it'll be 187 degrees, as Jay will be talking about all afternoon long, I am certain. But it was 187 degrees last night in Wilson County. But I got to tell you, I don't pretend that I'm a fair, F-A-I-R, aficionado, but I've been to a fair a time or two in my 50 years, almost 50 years, and I've never been to a better one. We went out to the Tennessee State Fair got there, we looked online, and it was advised when I mentioned it yesterday, a number of you in the audience advised me that it would be in my best interest to go ahead and get tickets, and 2, to park off-site and shuttle over. We did both of those, and I had 0 issues. We went in and pretty quickly got into the petting zoo and met the camels. If you follow me on social media, you can see some of these photos. Hot and heavy on the photos at the beginning of the trip, and then they kind of faded off by the time I got a turkey leg in my hand. I had a turkey leg. Where were you last night, Bell, when the Trump did you see the mugshot when it came out in real time, kind of?
Yes.
Where were you when you saw when you first saw the mugshot?
On the computer at home.
Yeah. I was standing in line to get my turkey leg. The wife was at a food truck trying to get a tater cake or something or another, but I felt like a turkey leg was kind of on plan for me. Strip the skin off and eat the turkey. That's the best thing that I could eat at the fair.
You don't have to strip the skin off. I keep telling you.
No, but you do at a fair. Have you had a fair turkey leg?
No, not in
the
long,
skin,
long time.
because the way that they smoke them, the skin gets kind of tough and it's almost unedible. But I did strip the skin off one way or the other. So I'm standing. I felt like such an American because I'm standing. I got my turkey leg in one hand. I got my telephone in the other hand with the Trump mugshot. And I actually heard people audibly responding and reacting to it on the midway.
I was really disappointed in the shot, by the way.
What?
I was really disappointed in the shot.
Are you kidding me?
I wanted a big S. Eaton grin on his face that's going to look good on a T-shirt.
I did too. I did too. You and I talked about it. And we both agreed big old smile was the way to go. I think Trump proved me wrong.
Why?
I love the scowl. It's I'm coming for you. It's you've effed with the wrong homie. That's what he's saying in that picture. That you have messed with the wrong indicted former ex-president. I love it. You wanted the smile. Okay, I get it. But I think this is
maybe
much better.
Maybe a thumbs up, too. Maybe he could have thrown a thumb up into the picture.
And it does 2 things. One, it invigorates and excites the base, right? I bet they wouldn't let him. Or I would have liked a point. Like if you're watching on Super Talk TV, give him. I would like one of those.
I'm coming for you.
I'm coming for you. I want you. But I bet they wouldn't let him do that. But it does 2 things simultaneously. I'm looking at it on the monitor right now. Donald Trump's fundraising off his arrest. Oh, he's making money. How awful is this? This is the worst of the worst. We thought Trump had no soul, but this is even bad for him. What a bunch of losers. They're whining and complaining because Donald Trump immediately put the mugshot that never should have happened, by the way. There is 0. Tell me the reason. Oh, it's the process, Matt. You've got to have a mugshot. What's a mugshot for? To identify someone? To make sure you understand what someone looks like? They were doing that to embarrass Donald Trump, and Donald Trump pulled one over on them, and now they're whining and complaining. Why is he making money off his mugshot? Mugshot on a mug. If he's not selling mugshot mugs, I don't know what to tell him.
They put his stats into the record, for identification purposes. And Rob Reiner today tweeted out that there's no way Trump was only 215. I'm like, really, Rob? You want to be the guy to start talking about weight?
I loved that too. Is that the leftist media? Don't get me started. The leftist media. I'm not going to get to talk about the Wilson County Fair, by the way, because I'm now on Trump. But the Wilson County Fair was awesome. Go. Was
Erica happy with it?
Incredibly happy.
That's all that matters.
Well, and here's the thing. Normally in fairs, you see places that'll look a little, shady,
sketchy.
Slimy, sketchy. You don't see any of that. Every area has something going on, and the Fiddler's Circle or Fiddler's whatever they call it, those old time buildings. Man, I'm all in. There was a radio station and a barbershop. They've put old buildings from around the state of Tennessee into this area called Fiddler's Circle, and they have log cabins, they have a grist mill, they have an old barber shop, they have an old grocery store. We talked to a lot of these folks. What a fabulous experience. Then, of course, the Midway. I don't ride the rides. I'm not an idiot, but, they got the carnies. You know how you battle a carny, by the way, and I was talking to my wife about this last night, E. You talk louder than them is how you battle a carny. And so, and you ask them odd questions. Like I went by a thing that was a balloon toss thing, and it was like Corky's balloon toss. And the guy's like, hey, come on, hey, win a prize for the lady. I was like, and this is what I did, Bill. You'll like this. You would have loved this if you're there. So, they're all trying to get you to come in, and I don't begrudge them doing that. Hey, win a prize for your beautiful girlfriend over there. And I looked, and I saw it was Corky's balloon. And I said, are you Corky? Are you Corky? And he went, no. I was like, well, I'm not playing. And I left.
Yeah, Andy Griffith proved your theory wrong.
What about?
When Opie was trying to win the shaver for him, and the guys had the bent sights.
Yeah, the bent sights on it.
Yeah, he did. All he had to do was say, "I'm the sheriff." You're going to let that boy win honest.
Oh, that's true. Get the real gun out there. Show him the real gun. Anyway, it was a great experience. Kudos to Wilson County and kudos to the Tennessee State Fair. I don't know how that gets organized, but it was pretty, and you don't say that often about fairs. And my goodness gracious, how many categories of different exhibits can you have in the exhibition hall? There's like 48 different categories for quilt making. There's quilt making by hand and antique quilt making and quilt making by feet, and I don't know what all they're doing. Machine-based quilt making, which I guess those are considered the losers for the handmade. Just a lot of things going on out there. So kudos to them. All right, more on the Trump mugshot and our reaction to it. I loved it. It was better than what I would have recommended. I would have recommended a smile. I don't think that it invigorates the base the way that this one does. And you simultaneously invigorate the people that believe in Donald Trump, and you infuriate the political left. They just, how does he make money off his mugshot? It's so wrong. This is shameful. It's even shameful for Trump. It's like, shut up.
How do you infuriate that which is constantly angry?
That's a good point. It's a good point. I think it's a new low for Trump. Good Lord. You know what? How many times have I told you? And there is no better example of it than the mugshot. Remember Murphy's rule? Well, I guess it would be Murphy's Law, number 147. Murphy's Law 147. The two things we got going for us. They think you're stupid, and they always overplay their hand. No better example than last night and this mugshot. More in a moment, 12:23 on Super Talk. You know what the turkey leg was missing? The one thing the turkey leg was missing last night was some delicious alderwood smoked sea salt from Savory Spice. I should have taken some in my pocket. I forgot to do so. But next time, I'll know. Savory Spice makes everything better. Whether it's popcorn and popcorn sprinkle, and they've got a variety of flavors, or if you're doing some veggies, they've got veggie sprinkles specifically designed for farm fresh vegetables, or they've got the meat sprinkles, the seasonings that you can put on steak and on salmon and on chicken and different other things. I mean, when I tell you that you up your food game by upping your spice game, that ain't just a line that I came up with. It is the truth. And you up your spice game in a far more superior way at Savory Spice. Go look in those cabinets. You got those clumpy old spices that you bought at the grocery store 6-7 years ago. You need to get rid of those things. You ain't in college anymore. Get to Savory Spice and up that spice game. And it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg more because, well, it doesn't at Savory Spice. Holly and David are local owners and operators of Savory Spice. They're good people besides, and I want you to support them. Go to L&L Market. There's a Savory Spice there on Charlotte Pike. There's also one off the square in Franklin next to Gray's Pharmacy. And tell them Matt Murphy sent you to Savory Spice. McGill's world-famous clock store wants to see you this weekend. By the way, I would note that McGill's world-famous clock store, all 35,000 square feet, completely air-conditioned. So if you're looking to do something this weekend that doesn't involve the oppressive heat, what about walking about and looking at some different kind of heat? You know what I'm talking about? Instead of the other heat, you're looking at the heaters. And they've got them in abundance at the world-famous Glock store. They specialize in Glock handguns, obviously. That's in the name. But they also have many different other brands. They have different types of firearms, accessories. They have something for everyone. Of course, they have ammo and performance parts. My goodness gracious, they have concealed carry underpants, which I've been talking about for some time and want to grab me some of those. I bought myself a fabulous vest from the world-famous Glock store as well. It is, I'm going to use it as a riding vest on my motorcycle trip, but, I mean, it's got concealed carry pockets in it. It's absolutely fabulous. You can see that in the accessories section. Plus, pyramid triggers, tungsten guide rods, extended controls, and beyond all that, a beautiful showroom space, great tactical shooting rooms, and good people that can help you in whatever your need might be. It is the world-famous Clock Store, and it's world-famous for a reason. Find out. Airlane Drive, just off of Elm Hill Pike. Go this weekend, and when you do, whether it's online at glockstore.com or shoot270.com or in person, tell them Matt Murphy sent you to the world-famous Clock Store.
An F-18 fighter jet goes down on a training mission. A fire at a Texas prison and another Army base has got a new name today. Those stories at 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Jay Harper, I'm a little upset at you because you now have me in you have me in a spot of bother. Oh
no!
I'm going to blame you because I can't blame myself. Mac Morey has now weighed in.
Oh.
And he called me a name that I can't repeat on the radio. And he also says that he brings the Cougars to the game, unlike Jay.
Well, I'll give him that. I will give him that.
Well, look, he might bring the Cougars to the game, but I won't be at the game if it weren't for Jay, so I'm still in Camp Harper. That's all I'm saying.
The loyalty is just non-existent.
You know how it goes. All right, I was about to go to the line one, and she left. Michael, you're in Chattanooga. You're the recipient of that gift. I think it was Patty who just hung up. Hey, Michael, how are you?
All right. Hey, man, I'm glad you're doing fine. I know the original question. How you doing? Anyway, you gave up on the Falcons after following them? Man, I'm a Saints fan from 66, and we didn't give up. We wore bags and stuff, but, hey, we hung in there.
But you know what? But your loyalty, Michael, I would argue your loyalty actually eventually paid off. You know what my loyalty got me?
Worse and worse. I know.
It got me the Patriots 28-3, man. We were up 28-3. All they had to do, if they had won that game. Well, if they'd have won that game, they'd have had me a Falcon for life. But they didn't. And
Yeah. Well, look at the Saints. Look at the games they've been shenaniganed out of. Is that a good word to use on the radio?
That's a perfect one. I like that, shenaniganed.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's all over the league. It's just that we follow a team and we see it bluntly, just like politics. You follow somebody, you see it firsthand.
I assume because the division is so poor, Michael, that you expect the Saints will win the division, right?
Nah, I don't know. Nah, maybe not. Who knows?
I mean, there's no way you're losing to the Panthers. You're not losing to the Falcons. I promise you that. Desmond Ritter's not taking the team to anything. And then the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, they may as well have thrown that Super Bowl trophy in the bay for all it's worth now.
Yeah. I know. Well, I hear you. We've been so close, but that was a different coach and a different. Now he's at Denver, man.
Michael, I know, I get it, but hey, I've got to go to Jay Harper. But before I do, I'm going to give you an opportunity. I'm going to give you an opportunity to give a nice hoot at. Go ahead.
Who dat? Who's going to beat them Saints? How about that?
Thanks, Michael. Have a great weekend. Here's Jay Harper.
Thanks a lot. I get to follow that. It's 12:31, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We've got sunshine and 96 hot, miserable degrees. We're looking at a heat index later today of 113 degrees in the Nashville metro. We'll get that forecast to you. You may not want to hear it, but it's coming up anyway. An F-18 Marine fighter jet operating out of Marine Corps Air Station Miramar near San Diego has gone down in a remote area on the military property. A search was launched for the pilot. It's unclear if it was a one-seater or a two-seater aircraft. San Diego Fire says it's got over 80 personnel currently taking part in that search. Approximately 655 inmates were evacuated from their cells early this morning from a state prison in Texas in Huntsville after a fire reportedly broke out inside an attic in one of the cell blocks. One of the prisoners, or the prison rather, their administration building also had that fire. No injuries were reported. The cause of the blaze is still unknown. And another Army base has got a new name today. Fort Walker is the new name of the military installation in Northern Virginia that was known as Fort A.P. Hill. The official redesignation honors Dr. Mary E. Walker, who treated Union soldiers during the Civil War. That is the latest news. We've got weather on the way. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
You know, I didn't see a lot of wokeness out at the Tennessee State Fair last night. I saw a lot of good people having a great time, and I saw a lot of people on their phones. And I wanted to walk up to each of them and ask them, are you using Patriot Mobile? You know, John Rich just had Patriot Mobile in his new I'm Offended video. I was proud to see it. Nice little cap there. And I thought, wow, that's a great association. John's associated with them. I'm associated with them. I believe in the way they do business. But I don't believe that you would switch if you were not going to get the same quality service. And one of the first questions I asked the representatives from Patriot Mobile when we talked about this was, is the service the same? Is the coverage the same? Can they keep their phone? Can they keep their phone number? Because I don't know that people will see the benefit if not. And they said absolutely, 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 and yes were their answers to my questions. You keep your phone, you keep your phone number, you get the same coverage, you get a coverage guarantee. Ask them about it when you make the call. And stop giving your money to woke corporations that don't really care about you. Give your money to companies that matter and give your money to companies that believe in the same things you do, like Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Murphy, patriotmobile.com/Murphy, or 878-PATRIOT, 878-PATRIOT, and use offer code Murphy for Patriot Mobile. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy and you. It's 12:38, an abbreviated visit with our good buddy Jay St. Clair coming up in just a moment. I was speaking, if you're going to the Titans game tonight, I was just speaking to one of the great folks over at the Titans Radio Network. I saw Rhett Bryan in the hallways, and we were talking about the game and the heat of the game. I asked him if he had AC up there in the announcer's booth, and they said that they did in the back, but obviously they open up the windows in the front, so the heat's coming in. He did say this. He said, we have the official forecast, and the expectation is that it's going to be 96 degrees at kickoff, which will make it certainly when you add the heat index, but they believe that it's going to be the hottest Titans game in the history of Nissan Stadium. Now, and that's a 7 o'clock kick. That's not a noon kick. And I'll be out there sweating with the rest of you. I don't know if Jay St. Clair can make it from Birmingham, Alabama, but he's down there and he's here to talk some law. Let's get to it. It's Friday, everybody. All right, load your questions in here fast and furious because we'll go lightning round rapid fire with your listener questions coming up in just a few moments with Jay St. Clair, and I appreciate Jay being able to slide over into the lunchtime hour. For those of you that listen at lunch and aren't able to listen later on in the day, Jay is our regular guest on Fridays. He's a good friend. He is the finest legal mind that I've ever met, and he joins us every week. Hey, Jay, how are you?
Hey, buddy. You know, if I was any better, I think I'd beat Bell.
He's doing pretty good. He looks if he gets to looking any better and loses any more weight, he's actually might be able to get a girlfriend.
So Trump got indicted yesterday.
So Jay, I predicted and I suggested that Donald Trump has proven me wrong twice this week, by the way. I recommended that Donald Trump smile during his mugshot.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I think I was wrong. I think what he did was better because it has ignited the political left in ways that I didn't even think they had in them. Your thoughts on? I know this is the political world more than the legal world, but it involves the legal world. I mean, your thoughts?
No. Right, no question about it. The two are absolutely intersecting here. Say what you want to about Trump, and he's got a lot of faults. We all do. Last perfect person on this world was nailed to a cross, man. But he is a PR genius. He is. I mean, because that's what his whole career was, right? I mean, if you're going to develop real estate in New York City, you better be a carnival barker.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And that's exactly what he reminds me of. And I guarantee you a lot of thought and time and effort went into how he should handle this. And I'll bet you pigs to polecats that he practiced striking that pose. I wondered about this. I wondered if they gave him more than one chance. Right? And normally they don't, right? They just snap the picture and that's it. It's kind of like getting your driver's license. Mm-hmm. I guarantee, I'll bet you pigs to polecats that they spent 15 minutes taking a mugshot of him over and over and over and over until they got just the look they wanted. And he's polished enough and professional enough to say, okay, I will look exactly like that when they take my picture.
And he did.
I guarantee you that. And he did.
Well, and it's ignited. I mean, it serves to excite and invigorate and galvanize the base and absolutely destroy the minds of his political enemies. It really is. And he was selling merch like 2 hours later. He's selling T-shirts. And you know what? My favorite T-shirt that I've seen so far is the mugshot, and in big letters it says "Wanted," and then in little bitty letters it says "For President."
Yeah. No, he's just brilliant at flipping the script. And, you remember when he was running for president, man, we were on the show together, and I told you I didn't know anything about him. And so I wanted to get educated about him. And so I read The Art of the Deal. And I was very impressed. He is a very smart guy. And this show, I mean, this is what he does. He's been developing real estate in New York City for 50 years, and he's got to get attention, and he's the carnival barker. He's great. On that part of it, he's just great.
Was it necessary? Because the feds never took the mugshot, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Was any of this necessary? Could Fulton County have foregone this?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not, man. I mean, the reason to take somebody's mugshot is if 6 months from now somebody robs a bank, and they give you kind of a general description of the person. Well, you go get mugshots that look pretty close to that person, and then you show them to the witness and say, well, is it any one of these people? That's the only reason you get mugshots. There are 10 trillion photographs of Donald J. Trump existing in the world. We don't need one more. So it was absolutely just to get a scalp.
Well, and that's
it backfired.
Well, and that's why I think it was so brilliant, the manner in which he's handled it from a public relations standpoint, because the entire thing was a PR stunt by Fulton County and by this DA.
Yep.
And so
your favorite phrase, hoisted on their own.
That's exactly, hoisted by their own petard. I mean, that's right. I mean, none of this, you're lamenting, oh, he's turning this into a money-making operation. He's making this a dog. Well, none of this would have happened if you had recognized that there was no functional reason for you to take his mugshot and release it to the press to begin with.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. He's a marketing genius.
What do you make?
But he's still. Has he ever followed you on Twitter like you said?
No, he did. So for those who don't know that story, I interviewed Trump in 2015. It was in advance of a rally that he was holding at Lad Peebles Stadium in Mobile, Alabama, and we scored him on the show. It's quite a big score. It was the last interview that Trump did before Senator Jeff Sessions endorsed his candidacy and really set his candidacy on fire, absolutely on fire. Right. And we were talking with him, and I said, well, Mr. Trump, if I can get you 20,000 people at Lad Peebles Stadium tomorrow night, will you follow me on Twitter? He said, absolutely, absolutely. We'll do it, yes. And he had 30,000 people at Lad Peebles Stadium, and I've yet to be followed on Twitter by him. And the punchline to the story is I've not had a chance to talk to him since, but I got a chance to talk to Don Jr., and you might remember this, Jay. I had a conversation with Don Jr., and I said, your dad never followed me on Twitter. And I told him the backstory. And I said, yeah, I told him if I got him 20,000 and blah, blah, blah. And then he said, yeah, he'd follow me. And Don Jr. paused, and he said, did he say when? And I said, no. And he goes, man, you got to watch those details with Dad.
Oh, that's funny.
Is this case going anywhere in your estimation?
I've given this a lot of thought, Matt, and the honest answer is I don't know. I do not. Cases can get thrown out of court short of trial, right? I do not believe that will happen here. Although I meant to check on this week, and I didn't. And shame on me. Depends on the composition of the Georgia Supreme Court, because they can file motions to dismiss, and if they're denied, and I hadn't looked at this, I bet somebody listening right now could. Maybe he'll text me and give me the answer. You can appeal that even before the trial. There's probably a process where they can do it and get that question in front of the Georgia Supreme Court. If the Georgia Supreme Court is conservative, then there is maybe a chance that it would get thrown out before trial, but I think that's unlikely. So I think, and then let's say they don't try the case before the election, and let's say Trump loses the election. Are they going to keep going? Right? Because the whole thing is about the election. And of course, if they drop it once he loses the election, man, that's going to look awful, right? And then it's just going to be apparent that it was all about the election. So when you say, is it going anywhere? Yeah, I think it's probably going to go to trial. What's going to be the outcome of the trial? Well, I can't say that because we don't know who the jury is. it's going to be drawn from the Metro Atlanta, so it's not going to be much of a pro-Trump jury. Although I've seen a lot of talk here recently where a lot of really iconic, big African American public figures are coming out in support of Trump.
Oh, yeah. I have your answer, by the way, Jay. I have your answer.
Okay. Yep.
I'm looking at the current slate of justices on the Georgia Supreme Court, and let's just go by who appointed them. I think that's a pretty fair.
Yes, sir.
4 of them have been appointed by Nathan Deal, a Republican, and 4 of them were appointed by Brian Kemp, a Republican, and 1 it doesn't have an appointment. It has a slash, and I guess at the Georgia Supreme Court it is termed. It's probably one of those one of those deals where what is it called?
Yeah, modified Missouri plan. Yeah, where you just sort of they don't actually. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they don't run against anybody, but you vote and say they're good. We'll keep them. So that looks to be somewhat of a favorable court, and I am especially impressed that of the 9 justices on the Georgia Supreme Court, Jay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. 5 of them.
Women.
No, University of Georgia. Law school. That's big. That's big. Not one of them went. Not one of them went to Yale, Jay. Not one.
I'm not surprised. So it could go that way, man. Right? They could file motions to dismiss. The trial judge is going to deny them. I hadn't looked at Georgia criminal procedure, but there's probably some way they can get that up to the Georgia Supreme Court before the trial. So it could go that way, but if you just made me bet right now what's going to happen, I would say that case is going to go to trial.
Well, and
I think that's true of all 4 of them. And frankly, I was thinking about this in anticipation of coming on your show. Frankly, I think the case where he probably has the most likely chance of being found guilty is the one in New York about the dancer, whatever she is.
Yeah,
Stormy Daniels.
Sure. Why do you say that?
Because of the venue, solely because of the venue.
Mm-hmm. Because of the jury, the makeup of the right. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Well,
guilt or I got you.
And the New York Court of Appeals, their Supreme Court, they do it the other way around. Their lowest court, they call the Supreme Court, man. Bunch of Yankees. But there's no way that case is going to get thrown out before trial.
Right.
And then he's got to go with trial in front of a bunch of Yankees.
Huh. Well, that's and despite the fact that that's where he's from, right? That holds no weight anymore. Well, hold your thought here, Jay. I'm going to get rapid fire to lightning round questions with Jay St. Clair because I've got a number of them coming in, and we have an abbreviated time frame today. Jay's with us on the line. It's 12:51. If you have any questions, get them in here, and I'll try to get to as many as possible before Jay Harper's News. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Man, oh man, so many safes, I can't even count them all. It would take a while to count them all, to include the showroom and the warehouse at Nashville Safe House. Mark has for several years made Joe Biden his salesman of the year. Well, and that's pretty obvious, right? Because crime being what it is, inner cities being what they are, concern about the economy, concern about inflationary rates, concern about interest rates. I mean, all of that leads people to recognize that it is of the utmost importance that you protect yourself and you protect your property. And so Mark says, who's sold more safes this year than anybody? Joe Biden. And he's right there in the showroom when you stop by. Mark's got a great sense of humor about all of this, and I hope you do too. And I hope that you protect yourself and protect your family with a safe from the Safe House. I mean, they've got rebates. They've got Browning. They've got Fort Knox. They've got Rhino. They've got all manner of Liberty. They've got a lot of different styles of safes and sizes of safes for you to choose from. They have one that will fit your lifestyle, and they will deliver it to you. They will deliver it to you at cost. That means that they charge for delivery. They don't just embed the cost in the price of the safe. So go to NashvilleSafeHouse.com and find out more. Better yet, stop by on 4th Avenue South, across from the City Cemetery. It's Nashville Safe House. All right, very limited time with our good friend Jay St. Clair, a limited session with Jay on this Friday, but we'll get back to it and get to the questions directly. Jay, this one starts it, and it's right down. It's a soft pitch right down the middle, but it's right in your wheelhouse. You ready for this?
Yes, sir.
Why is the state allowed to do this when the election is federal? Question coming in from one of our super texters.
Yeah, well, they're accusing him of violating state criminal laws.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that somebody assassinates somebody running for president of the United States, and they kill him in Georgia. Well, Georgia can try him and convict him of murder. Right.
Right. Sure. Well, and I would argue, and this is more the political side of the question, right? I would argue that it's not a federal. There's no such thing as a federal election.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too.
Yeah.
But there are state crimes. Now, one of the interesting things here, we won't have time to talk about it, but some of these people are saying, "Well, I get to go to federal court because there's a procedure where if a federal employee is being charged with a crime arising out of his job, he gets to go to federal court." Because it is very unseemly for a state to put on trial a federal official for something he did in connection with his job.
All right.
That's not what the forefathers thought.
All right. No more time for substantive questions, but I will ask this one that comes to us from Stan. Stan wants to know, Jay, are you Rocky Top?
I'm not Rocky Top. But I love Rocky Top, and my son loves Rocky Top, and my grandchildren love Rocky Top.
I think that's good enough for Stan. It's good enough for me. Jay, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, my friend.
See you, buddy.
All right, take care. There's Jay St. Clair. Coming up, Cameron Sexton, Speaker of the House. He'll update us on what's going on in that special session died, didn't it? Like a possum on a backwards country road. We'll be back.
Good afternoon. It is 1 minute past 1 p.m. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We've got sun and 96 degrees. We're expecting a heat index of about 113 by the time we get to around 3 o'clock this afternoon. We'll get that full forecast to you here momentarily. U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell warns that additional interest rate hikes could be coming after observing signs that the economy just may not be cooling as they had hoped. Here is Powell's take if they choose to do nothing with respect to interest rates.
Doing too little could allow above target inflation to become entrenched and ultimately require monetary policy to wring more persistent inflation from the economy at a high cost to employment. Doing too much could also do unnecessary harm to the economy.
Those comments made at a conference in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. ABC News has learned that new details on the status of the pilot following today's early morning combat jet crash near a Marine Corps air station in San Diego. Luis Martinez from ABC has more.
Moments ago, we learned from a defense official that the pilot of this F-18 Hornet has perished in this crash. We don't have many other details about exactly what happened. What we do know is that this was a training mission, an F-18 pilot flying a nighttime mission, and apparently this aircraft crashed shortly before midnight near Miramar, Marine Corps Air Station.
New data obtained by Channel 4 here in Nashville shows that every day Tennessee's special session goes on, it costs taxpayers nearly $60,000 a day. That's between transportation and per diem pay for each lawmaker. That is according to the Office of Legislative Administration. Data shows state senators receive nearly $8,000 a day combined in per diem pay, or $242 a day per senator. Gas mileage payments for the Senate come to a little more than $6,000 a day, or about $185 a day per senator. As for the House, in which the number of representatives triples that of the Senate, per diem pay adds up to more than $24,000, or about $251 per state representative. Nearly $20,000 is allotted for the representative's total transportation costs, and that is per day. That is the latest news. Weather's next. Jay Harper, WTN News.
Hello, freedom lovers. It is 1:06 and a good afternoon. Matt Murphy with you on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. As I mentioned, our episode 407. Happy to be with you today on this Friday edition. It is blazing hot outside. It has been all week. You know what to do. Keep hydrated and keep in the shade if at all possible. Hopefully you're on the shady side of the stadium if you're going to the Tennessee Titans contest against the New England Patriots a little bit later on this evening at Nissan Stadium. As I mentioned earlier, I was talking with Rhett Bryan, one of the great voices of the Tennessee Titans radio network staff, and he was saying that the expectation is 96 degrees at kick at 7:15 tonight, which would put it right at the hottest game on record at Nissan Stadium, and it's a night game. So be careful, get hydrated. I don't know what just happened to the phones. You might want to look over there. Look, are you all right on your end? Because on my end, they just went away.
No, I just lost connection to the server.
Yeah, I did too. So hopefully we'll get that back up and running because we had Cameron Sexton on the line. He was sitting there right on the Murphy Show hotline waiting to come on air. Maybe all of my yippity yapping about the Tennessee Titans game caused him to hang up. I don't know. Oh, look, he's back. I don't know what that meant, but special session is ongoing, and we wanted to get from the speaker's mouth what his expectations are, and there seems to be a difference of opinion, which is part of the process between the Senate and the House of Representatives as to what merits action under these extraordinary circumstances and what does not. With that in mind, we welcome back to the show Cameron Sexton, the Speaker of the House of the General Assembly of the state of Tennessee. Cameron, hope your Friday's going well. Hope you're keeping cool.
Yeah, it's going well. It's hot, that's for sure.
That's true. And my dumb self, I'm dragging my wife to the Titans game tonight, the hottest one in history. I'll let you know how that goes, Cameron.
Yeah. Let me know.
Couldn't be hotter than in the session, though, man. How about that for a transition? I mean, there's a little heat going on in this session. Let me start here because I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on it. Cameron, I get it. The regular session devolved back in the spring in a way that you did not care for. Some of your colleagues on the Democrat side of the aisle suggested that you went too far in, or the body, I should say, went too far in the expulsion of two of the members for their antics on the floor. And so you and the Rules Committee set about trying to resolve that, to give other options to the House of Representatives in terms of violation of the rules. And coupled in that, you set about some rules for the gallery because the gallery got out of hand in the last regular session. So now we have literally a lawsuit against you suggesting that signage should not be permissible. Just walk us through your thought process on all of this and where we are on that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, so when we finished last session, I had the clerk call many states and just say, hey, what's your House rules on decorum and how do you handle disruptions? And so we got a lot of feedback, which a lot of those things are incorporated in the rules, because we had heard that, which is true, we only had censorship and expulsion. And so even the Democrats at the time said, hey, we should have some other options to consider. So we gave them some options. Now they don't want the options. I've heard you talk about that the other day. But as far as on the signage, let's just be clear. It's the same policy that Congress has. Congress doesn't allow you to take signs in their gallery. Congress allows the committees to have the determination if they allow signs or not based on the chairman. Same policy we have. And heck, even the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't allow signs in the Supreme Court. So, all we're doing is kind of following policies of what other people are doing to make sure that we have the case. Now, I will say, it's been a policy of the House since the early 2000s that there's no signs allowed in the gallery. So nothing's changed. It's just we moved it from a policy to a rule. So, people are upset about it, but hey, we'll go fight it out in court.
Well, and I think you'll be victorious because, as I noted earlier in the week, in the gallery in the Congress of the United States of America's House of Representatives, as you just confirmed, Cameron, there's a no sign policy there as well. So I don't understand those that are arguing that their First Amendment rights are being violated because the gallery is there to observe, not to comment or make statements on the activities of the various committees or of the whole body, correct?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to you on that since we're in a lawsuit. What I will tell you, too, is Congress, in order to sit in their balcony, you have to get a ticket. We don't even allow you to have to go get a ticket. But
well, that's right.
Congress allows that, too.
All right, where are we in terms of the session? It seems that, the 50,000-foot view, it feels like the Senate has been a lot more structured and limited in what they brought out of committee and what they brought to the floor. The House is considering a few additional bills. Tell me how that works functionally in terms of what we can expect to be passed during the special.
Well, we'll see. The House and Senate are in total disagreement. We spent a lot of time this summer traveling the state, not just me, but other members, working with stakeholders, working with mental health facilities, working with law enforcement, working with DAs, working with different groups out there, as well as working with covenant moms and parents on things that we could do. The House, just to your audience know, just for the record, the House is the only one that defeated the red flag bill. The Senate never defeated it. It's still alive in the Senate. They laid it on the table, but it's still alive. You can get it back off the table. The House, it's dead. It died. It's over. We're the only ones that defeated the red flag bill. Now, outside of that, we have other ideas. We have a mental health crisis. We think there's some things that we should do. We have a juvenile crime problem in our state, especially in the bigger cities. We think we should do and hold juveniles accountable. We have other ideas, the duty to warn. There's a lot of things, that we think we can do. So we're going to pass those things. Unfortunately, the Senate right now wants to be doing nothing. I think Tennesseans are asking for something. I think that's the agreement. I think people understand we have a mental health crisis, a juvenile crisis, a crime crisis in our state. We're prepared to go in and get it done. I don't think that you can wait 12 months to go back and solve some of those issues that the Senate's willing to do nothing on.
Help me understand, and maybe give me the big three or the ones that come to mind when I say, what issues are you talking about when you say there are some that cannot wait until the regular session?
Well, when you talk to one, Davidson County juvenile crime is the number 2 issue, and Memphis is the number 1 issue. You had 7,600 juvenile crimes in the last year alone that were violent offenses that are Group A. They've had a 15% increase in juvenile violent crime in Memphis in the last year. You've had over, if you just say there's one victim for every crime, which we know there's more than that per crime, that there's 7,600 victims. Now what you're saying is if you're going to wait a whole nother year, now you're going to have another, if it stays flat, which it won't, another 7,600 crimes, another 7,600 victims. I don't think you can wait to address that. We also know in the Covenant shooting that individual was under doctor's care. We have a duty to warn statute that's unclear, that's vague, that doesn't help anybody contact law enforcement if someone's making threats against themselves or to society. We need to clean that up. That would have stopped the Covenant shooter, by and large. We also know that we have a mental health crisis. We don't have enough access. We don't have enough resources. We know that mental health facilities and providers are not being compensated the equivalent of substance abuse treatment. So we're trying to put some money in that. We're trying to protect higher education. We funded K through 12 for safety. We didn't do anything for college campuses, so we want to do that. So there's things in there that we can do right now that would move us in a direction that will allow us to continue to focus on things. Unfortunately, the Senate, getting a tax break on gun safe is great, but it wouldn't have done anything to stop the Covenant shooter.
Well, which of those bills that you mentioned would have?
Well, the duty to warn could have very well, because right now it's vague.
But I think it's a little unfair for you to point a finger at the Senate and say, well, none of those bills would have stopped the Covenant shooter. Well, none of your bills would have been guaranteed to stop the Covenant shooter either, Cameron.
Well, duty to warn has the best possibility to stop it. If you give law enforcement tools, we have another bill about defining a general mass threat against society is what she's done. That would have been the possibility as well. If we'd had a background database check system that was instantaneous, that could have helped, which we don't have, which the Senate doesn't want to take up. So the thing is, you have 4 to 5 different things that the House is willing to do. 100% guaranteed to stop her. You're probably right.
Wait a minute, I might be vague.
Yes,
I might be mistaken here, but I thought the Senate was taking up codifying the background speed on the background check.
No, all they were wanting to do is codify
the executive order, right?
Executive order. But the problem is you still have all these clerks whose systems are not integrated. You have a system that not all the data gets to the TBI. So what you're doing is putting a parameter on something that the clerks can't achieve because they don't have the software, they don't have the capability, you don't have the access. It doesn't take much to talk to the DAs and the judges who all have different databases, the public defenders, and they tell you how bad the system is that we have. Putting a limit on something and not addressing the underlying issues doesn't solve the problem.
What does it take? Money?
Well, it takes a direction of getting everybody in and having an understanding of this is what we want to achieve. And so right now you have everybody with their own databases. The courts have theirs. You don't have all the courts sending in their crime data, Matt. Think about it. Not all of the counties are even sending their crime data to TBI.
Wait, isn't that currently against the law?
I'm just telling you, they don't send it in.
Well, I know, but my question is, are you suggesting, and I think I might be agreeing with you here, my suggestion is, so do we need to make it more punitive against those systems that are not following the law currently?
We need to hold them accountable, and that's the problem. There's no accountability factor. So let's just say, right, and you're right, there's no accountability for them to send in the data. There's no consequence for them. There's none. And so we have a system, we're going to say, you need to send it in 72 hours. Well, hey, Matt, you know what? I want you to go get a Dunkin' Donuts coffee in 72 hours. You need to do that. And you're going to go, well, what's the penalty if I don't? Well, there's not. Then what's forcing you to do it? Nothing, other than somebody saying you should. And so our background check system should be one of the most important things that we should focus on, and we're not even focusing on it.
I mean, is it smart? And I'm not arguing with you, Cameron. I'm just asking the question, is it smart policy to do that in a special session with such a speeded up process? Should we not do this during a regular where you can be more deliberative about these points that you're currently making?
We've been discussing the database for 6 years. We've been asking the administrative courts to do it for 10 years. I don't know how much longer we can continue to try to be nice and ask. So why not put the pressure on them? Why not sit there and debate it? We've talked to, I don't know if the Senate has, we've talked to the DAs. We've talked to the clerks. We're in the process of saying, how do we fix this? It's a problem. One thing that we all agree on, if you're a felon or if you've been adjudicated as mentally incompetent and committed and you shouldn't be able to have a gun, it should be in the database. But we have 250,000 pieces of information that's not in there because we don't have anything to hold anybody accountable, and there's no system in place that allows that information to freely flow back and forth.
So I'm looking at quotes here from Randy McNally, from Senator Bo Watson, and others that are saying, we've done everything we're going to do over in the Senate. And I hear you as Speaker of the House of Representatives in the General Assembly for the state of Tennessee, Cameron. I get a sense, you tell me if I'm wrong, that there's some genuine frustration in your voice pointed toward the Senate right now.
I don't know if it's frustration, but look, we have talked to a ton of Tennesseans, business owners, law enforcement, judicial people, average people, Republicans, Democrats, independents. We don't agree on everything. We don't agree that, we should do barring of guns, that we should pass red flags. But what the common theme is, people understand we have a mental health crisis, and we have to do something. We needed to address mental health 10 years ago. People to vaguely say, well, we need to wait till January, or the issue's too complex, or there's not enough here for an emergency that we should do anything. That's just totally wrong. We've known for 3 months, Matt, we have known for 3 months the governor was calling us in. The governor met with every single member over that 3 months to tell them, what do you want to do? How do we want to proceed? People are going to argue that they didn't know what the call was, but they had a good understanding that mental health was going to be part of it. Juvenile crime was going to be part of it. So the issue of them saying it's too complex and we don't have time, they had time to prepare. The House was prepared. The House has done its work. We're prepared to lead our state. We just wish the Senate would do something and not nothing.
Forgive my ignorance on this. What is the bill number on the duty to report bill? Because I would love to read it.
Yeah, I'll get it to you.
Okay, just get it to me. You don't have
Zachary. It's Jason Zachary's bill. I don't have it on me.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I'd like to see it, but because because I'm curious, and once again, I'm not trying to be obtuse here, Cameron, but I was publicly educated in Georgia. You'll have to forgive me. But when you talk about mental health and the mental health crisis, outside of duty to report, what do you think you could get done if the Senate was more willing?
We have an emergency and voluntary commitment statute right now that is not working. 1,600 people went through the first step of having two healthcare providers say that they needed to be committed by emergency and voluntary. They were denied. 1,600 people were denied who should have been committed for observation. That's a problem.
Let me clarify. These were people that were asking for commitment.
No, these are people who were refusing to be committed, but the healthcare people, a couple of different people, said that they should have.
I see.
And so 1,600 of them. Now, the other part is we don't have enough beds in our state. Now, I will admit we can't solve that problem in August. But when you talk to mental health facilities and mental health providers like Peninsula in Knoxville, Tennessee, they are losing tens of millions of dollars a year because TennCare reimbursement does not reimburse them to the same rate as substance abuse treatment and other things. And so they're like, how long can we stay in business? We can't continue to lose money. Now, I'm not saying we solved that in August, but in the appropriation, we put money in the appropriation through the TennCare Reserve Fund. If you're taking care of TennCare patients, we can at least allow you to continue seeing patients, keep the beds open, and not have to make that decision until we go back in. That should be common sense to try to do something like that. And so you mentioned the duty to warn. I mean, there's just things that we can continue to do, but the Senate just doesn't want to do it because they're angry at the governor, I think, for calling a special session.
Well, or they don't believe that any of these things rise to the level of extraordinary circumstances.
Well, if that was the case, then the governor can just expand his executive order and extend it out on what we talked about instead of codifying it. So if you don't think that rights, I mean, look, Matt, if the governor can extend it or rewrite a new one and you vote overwhelmingly to codify something that the governor can do himself, do not use the argument with the House that nothing rises to the level of extraordinary if that does.
Are you proud of the fact that the House of Representatives, you mentioned it earlier in the interview, that the House in subcommittee took down the red flag bill, considering where Tennessee is on that legislation?
I am. I'm happy that we stood strong and defeated it. The Senate didn't. And let me mention one thing. You have Scott Sapicki on here. We have a problem in Davidson County and in some other counties with our charter schools. The charter schools fall under the LEA. The LEAs in some places are refusing the charter schools to get an SRO because we put in law that they had to have a memorandum of understanding. If they can't get that MOU, they can't get an SRO, even if they want it. Sapicki has a bill to fix that. But instead, what the Senate wants to do is just put additional money in and not even fix the problem and just give them another pot of money. We already gave Davidson County money for SROs. We're going to tell them it's okay to not to give it to charter simply because they don't want charters to have it? Why not fix the bill and allow them to take the money that we appropriated in April instead of making them go through a whole nother pot of money? I mean, it's things like that that you look at and you're like, if this doesn't rise to the level of importance, what does in the Senate?
I had a couple of people ask me this, and I know we're running very late, and I apologize to Bell, and thank you, Cameron, for sticking in there with us. Very important issues. Several people asked, what are the checks and balances on the emergency incarceration or the emergency, the bill that would involuntarily get individuals some medical attention, the 1,600 people you were mentioning. Does that have a judicial component to it as a check and balance?
Yes, it's currently in the judicial. You have to have two physicians that want to do it. You have to currently go to the court system to have you committed because it's involuntary. If you're voluntary, you don't. You just go check in. The involuntary has due process. It has courts. It has evaluations, and you have to be committed through the court system. It's not done without due process. And so all we're saying is instead of immediate risk, can we go to a foreseeable risk or imminent risk? Can we do something that would give them a little latitude to capture some of those additional people who think should be committed?
Back after it on Monday, I assume?
We'll be back. We're hopeful that the Senate will come back and want to do something, so we'll see.
Cameron Sexton, a powerful 20 minutes of conversation. I appreciate you being on with us today, and have a fine weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you.
All right, take care. There's Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton. Very late, 26 after the hour. Back in a moment. Yeah, the Dr. Gill Center is looking for those of you like me with some knee pain. You know, I didn't get this offer, and I'm a little upset. I need to talk to Dr. Wendy or, Dr. Dominic, Dr. V over there, Dr. Gill himself, They're looking for five people who are suffering from knee pain that want to experience significant relief in the next 30 days. And by the way, I'm just kidding about that. I'm already receiving knee relief, and I want you to receive it as well. It's without pills, without surgery. What is living with knee pain costing you? This is new technology, and this is fabulous at the Dr. Gill Center because they want to get you back to a pain-free life. If you're suffering from knee pain, if it is painful to walk or perform day-to-day activities, if the idea of walking out at the Tennessee State Fair like I did last night is just, whoa, I can't do that because of my knees, you need to talk to the Dr. Gill Center. They can get you back to a pain-free life. They're looking for 5 people who suffer from knee pain who want to experience significant relief in the next 30 days without pills, without surgery, without the need for needles. It's the Dr. Gill Center. For back, neck, and chronic pain relief, don't take a pill. Call Dr. Gill. 615-882-4838. Tell them I sent you. 615-882-4838.
Good afternoon. It is 1:30, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We've got sun and a sweltering 98 degrees. A full forecast is on the way. Following former President Trump's appearance at the Fulton County Jail on Thursday, the last of the 19 defendants in that racketeering indictment in Georgia have now turned themselves in. That brings the case to its next stage.
Came down to the wire for two defendants, Stephen Lee and Tervizan Kuti, who are two people that were accused of trying to strong-arm Ruby Freeman, who was a poll worker in Fulton County, and all of them have now surrendered. They've been booked, their mugshots taken, and perhaps could be due here in Fulton County Court in about 2 weeks for arraignment.
That is ABC's Aaron Katursky reporting from Fulton County. New details on the status of the pilot following this morning's combat jet crash during a training mission near the Marine Corps Miramar Air Station in San Diego. ABC News is reporting from a defense official that the pilot of that F-18 Hornet has died in the crash. No other details on exactly what occurred there. Early voting has begun today in Davidson County for Nashville's mayoral runoff election. Early voting polls will be open for the next 2 weeks ahead of the September 14th runoff between candidates Freddie O'Connell and Alice Rowley. Other races include Tennessee House District 51 and several city council seats. That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
USS stands for United Structural Systems. They protect you in your home. Your home protects you from the elements and from all of those things that go on outside, the heat and the wind and the rain and whatnot. But if your home has a poor foundation, it is impossible for it to properly do its job. And USS, well, when it comes to large home repairs, they are the best. It's as simple as that. The attitude and the culture is the reason that they keep employees year after year, and their employees are the reason that they are the best at what they do. They keep you in mind first, foremost, and last, the customer, the homeowner. You're not going to get someone who's worried about meeting a sales quota or someone who's just worried about digging into your yard. They're going to find peace of mind as they find the solution to your issue, whether it's foundation repair, waterproofing, or concrete leveling. They've served Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, and Northern Alabama since 1994, serving over 25,000 satisfied customers. USSTN.com is the website, USSTN.com, or 615-488-7855, 488-7855, USS. They guarantee their best. Super Talk 99.7 WTN absorbing that conversation with a fired-up Cameron Sexton, the Speaker of the House, annoyed at the Senate. And that's my word. I don't know that he would use that word, but I'll say it. I mean, he seems upset at the Senate for not taking up some of the issues that he believes is of importance to the state of Tennessee and the people of the state of Tennessee, and cannot wait until January. Your thoughts, 615-737-9986, 615-737-9986. I've got, I think we got some folks downstairs because I got people calling my cell phone. That would make sense. So thank you for that. Chip is next up in Hendersonville. Chip, what are your thoughts? What do you got?
Hey, man, if y'all want to get rid of the mass shootings, we need to get rid of the gun-free zones. I mean, it's like fish in a barrel. There's no consequence to what they're doing because nobody's armed but them.
I agree with you.
But
I agree with you in as much as we should not have gun-free zones on public property where there is not permanent security. And I'm not trying to get too in the weeds here, but yeah. I understand why there is an inability to take a gun into a courthouse.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, well, there's several armed officers.
That's exactly right. But in terms of like public arenas and other places like that, it's ridiculous. I mean, gun-free zones create target-rich environments.
Yes. Yeah, we're trying to pass new laws, and what we need to do is get rid of a couple, and the people will sort it out.
Well, we'll see. I mean, the one would have thought, and here's my diatribe on it, okay? One would have thought that the leadership in the House of Representatives and the leadership of the Senate would have gotten together prior to a special session that they knew was coming. I mean, the governor was pretty clear to everyone. We can debate whether or not a special session was necessary till the cows come home, but the governor was crystal clear that he was calling one. 100%. I knew that. I talked to the governor's people a month and a half prior to the call, and they said as much, that they were absolutely invested in holding a special session. That said, the Senate and the House apparently did not get their bodies in order, and they didn't have conversation. I don't know why, and maybe I can ask the question of Cameron or Jack Johnson or if Randy McNally is willing to come on the show. I don't think Randy McNally does much radio. I don't think he talks a lot to the media at all. I think he's too busy on Instagram. I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to the audience. You continue your conversation in there. That's okay. It's all good. Freddie's much more interesting than I am anyway. Freddie O'Connell's coming up in just a little bit. And so I'm picking on Bell about it. One would have thought, considering the amount of time that they were given, that the Senate and the House would have come together and talked. Why wouldn't they do that? Apparently they haven't. The Senate felt like whatever level of limiting that they could do with regard to the bills that would be taken up would be in their best interest, and they just passed that legislation of an extraordinary nature, and they just get the hell out of Dodge. Meanwhile, the House wants to do a more robust dig through a lot of these issues that they believe is important. I don't doubt that Cameron is telling me what he believes. I don't doubt his honesty that he believes that some of these things can't wait until January, and we asked him what those things were. He said the duty to warn was one of them, and emergency involuntary incarceration was another, with fail-safes and checks. The Speaker of the House of Representatives sounded frustrated with the Senate, but I would kind of lay that back in the laps of both bodies. I'm not trying to cast one against the other, but do you not have a phone? Did you not have a conversation with each other? I'm not casting aspersions. I just don't know. I understand we are where we are. Was there not a conversation between the Senate and the House leadership as to what they were going to do and how they were going to do it? And if not, what are you people doing? None of these issues are new. And frankly, the more I reflect on the interview, and I value our opportunity to speak with Cameron Sexton, and I think he's coming at this from an honest place. But you're telling me about issues that have existed for the last 6 years with regard to reporting requirements from local courts? Wait a minute. So you're telling me that the local courts have not been following the law and reporting as they should for the last 6 years, and you've not done anything about it? I don't understand why there's not been action on this prior to Covenant. I just don't get it. 9553 says the speaker sounded frustrated. Yeah, I guess he is. 3449 says databases are literally the tool of Big Brother. We have a GOP willing to support snooping on everyone. Step 1, create the database. Step 2, use it to target potentially harmful people with mental issues. Step 3, expand who qualifies. Well, it's up to for us to prevent step 3. I would say that if, well, let me ask you this then, 3449, and I'm not getting on you. Let's just have this conversation. So should we not have a database on who has been arrested for and convicted of a felony with regard to their rights to own guns? If you don't have a database about who has been convicted of a felony, and maybe you feel like people should have the right to own guns even if they've been convicted of a felony. I don't know. Patrick writes in and says, of those 1,600 failed involuntary commitments, how many of those individuals committed gun crimes? It's a good question, and I'm going to follow up on that question, Patrick. I thought of it late in the interview. What Cameron was saying, for those who just joined us, Cameron Sexton, Speaker of the House, said that we had 1,600 individuals that medical professionals stated that they needed to be involuntarily committed into an institution to get them some mental health help. Those individuals, 1,600 of them, did not wish to be institutionalized. And for those reasons, they were unable to do so. And he believes that there should be a provision by which they are involuntarily institutionalized on the recommendation of 2 medical health professionals and with the blessing of a judge in good standing with the state of Tennessee. But that, as it stands today, that's not the case. Friends, here's my takeaway. I do not understand why the Senate and the House did not talk about all of this prior to the session. You knew in April, the governor was clear in April he was calling a special session. He did not waver off that. He spoke to all of you. It is my understanding that the governor of the state of Tennessee spoke to every representative and every senator about this matter. And if he missed 1 or 2 or 3, those were the exception that proves the rule. How in the world is it that the governor can sit down with every member of the General Assembly, but leadership in the House and the Senate can't sit down together and get their minds together about how they want to approach this session? Why wouldn't they do that? $85.23 says the same people who brought embarrassment to our state with not kicking out all 3 of the people who showed their behinds during the last session. Well, they kicked out 2 of the 3, 8523, but the Constitution of the state of Tennessee allows for the local communities that the individual representatives served to name a replacement, and they named the same people that were kicked out as replacements, and there's no provision preventing that under the law, so they were following the law. And then special elections were held, and as predicted by me, the expulsions ultimately raised the profile of the individuals expelled and gave them a bigger platform and a bigger, dare I say, bullhorn than they ever would have had had you simply reminded them of the rules, perhaps limited their ability to speak on the floor for a limited period of time, and then moved on. But they didn't do that. We're going to move on from this. I'll tell you what, since he's here, I don't see any reason why we don't move on and speak with one of the two mayoral candidates running for mayor of Nashville. That election will be here before you know it. I mean, I think it's, 3 weeks or something like that? I think that's right. Freddie O'Connell joins us in studio to talk about so many of these issues and much, much more. That's coming up next on Super Talk. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy for the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project. One of the prides that I'm so proud of the fact that I can say that I'm associated with the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project. I've had the opportunity to sit down and talk with David Corlew. Perhaps you've heard those interviews. His relationship with Charlie Daniels is well established, and how they established the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project was simple. They saw so many of our heroes coming home from the battlefields, men and women alike, who were not ready to reintegrate into society. And as much as some organizations try to help, there are many other organizations out there that just don't do it the right way. And so Charlie, David, and the rest of their team, they decided that they were going to do the vetting. They were going to make sure that any organization that they work with is an on-the-ground organization where the maximum amount of money goes to the veterans themselves to help reintegrate our veterans, whether they have physical damage to their body or mental damage to their body. That damage is real, and they need our help. They deserve it. And so I encourage you to give as you can to the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project. Go on the website today and find out how you can be a part of their annual event, September 13th. It's the CharlieDanielsJourneyHomeProject.org. That's the CharlieDanielsJourneyHomeProject.org.
All defendants have now turned themselves in the Georgia racketeering indictment. That does include former President Trump and a chemical leak and fire at a South Louisiana refinery. I'll fill you in at 2 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
A lot of reaction to our conversation with Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton coming in on the Super Text line. And you're invited to be a part of that at 615-737-9986. Just running down some of it, 4725 says the House and Senate should work every day available to get the special session done, no days off, including weekends. I promise you it would be a shorter special session if they had to work today. I got a better suggestion for you. If you want to have a special session in the middle of August in the state of Tennessee, turn off the AC in the Capitol building and let's see how quickly they get something or nothing done. I mean, right? I mean, that would be quite something. Sexton wants the courts to communicate, but the House and Senate can't communicate. Irony. Yeah, I mean, and I just don't get it. And I'm not quick enough to ask the question directly, although I asked it indirectly of Cameron Sexton. But for the life of me, I don't understand. If Cameron said twice, you've known this was coming. Well, if you've known this was coming, did you not also know how the Senate was going to handle it? And if not, why not? I'm not trying to be too hard on the guy, but during the course of there's nothing preventing him from talking to the Senate. I mean, there's no rule that says that those bodies can't communicate but for bills passed amongst the two bodies. So it seems, I don't know, maybe there's something that I'm not seeing, and perhaps we'll get to the bottom of it. One way or the other, I want to shift our attention. I have been, and maybe it's just because I'm new. Maybe it's because I'm learning the players here on the Metro Council and the players within the mayor's race with fresh eyes. But I have been taken with the mayor's race, and it's come down to 2, Freddie O'Connell and Alice Rowley. It's happening in a few short weeks where the citizens, the voters of Davidson County, will go to the polls. They can go, I guess now, actually.
Right now.
Early voting. And Freddie O'Connell joins us.
7
That's my way of introducing Freddie. Freddie O'Connell joins us in studio for a good conversation. We'll have a couple of minutes before the top of the hour and then a good time after the top of the hour. Hey, Freddie.
Hello. So I understand. I walked in, and I understand that you usually do this on Fridays over beer, and I'm like, why did you make me come to the studio? How did I get the short straw on this one?
Our beer conversations have been going so well out on Charlotte Pike that they're building a kitchen. And so we got told.
So now I'm missing beer and food.
Right.
Oh,
but
good.
No. They found out that you had COVID. They're like, no. How are you feeling, by the way?
Oh, I'm fine. And this was, the good news is I didn't have anything worse than mild cold symptoms, didn't even catch a fever. But it was a surprising reminder. It was just, a single Metro Council meeting causing several dozen people to get COVID. A couple of them got pretty sick. And so, best wishes to everybody out there who's got it.
Well, and I think the COVID-19 in and of itself it is going to be absorbed in our society in a similar fashion to the heavier strains of the flu, in as much as if your immunity is compromised, if you're older, if you have pre-existing conditions, then you got to be aware of that.
And that's kind of like, I came at it from a perspective of trying to keep other people safe. We're very fortunate nobody in our family got it, nobody on my team got it. To your point, I'm worried about my parents because they're older. My dad's immunocompromised, and it's like, okay, it'd be better if he does not get it.
Do you, toward that end, there's a little bit of a resurgence. I see some stories online. Would you, as Nashville mayor, ever foresee, I guess you can't discount anything, but could you ever foresee some of the actions were taken in 2020 and 2021 with regard to mandates and lockdowns and that sort of thing?
So, Matt, you may have seen, I think just a few weeks ago, there was sort of this assessment of Nashville's overall response to the pandemic. Look, we'd all want to keep our fingers crossed that we never go back to a place, but, you never want to be in a position. In 2020, I had multiple friends of mine hospitalized on oxygen, one of them literally in the parking garage at VUMC where they had put extra beds, right, at Vanderbilt's Medical Center in a parking garage because they had run out of space in the hospital. And he's lying there surrounded literally by people who are dying, and he's worried he's about to go on a ventilator. Fortunately, he made it out. you never want to be in that situation again. I think if you saw something that dramatically impactful, you'd want to look at a public health response, but you'd want to evaluate it and make sure we learned a lot of lessons. We learned a lot of lessons about schools, business, anything about spread of the virus, that kind of thing. We hope we never see something that has a higher fatality rate. We hope we never see anything like that.
Without necessarily pointing fingers at individuals, but I'm curious, does it concern you, or do you see how the issue became politicized, and does that concern you?
Yes, and I would say it was tricky because I think the politicization happened at a national level as well, and that was one of the thorniest parts of it. It also happened across a presidential election where you saw a change in partisan leadership, right? So tough.
All right, music in the background means that we've got to wrap up. We'll get to Jay Harper in a moment, but Freddie's going to be with us for the better part of the next hour, talking about a variety of issues. And if you have any questions for Freddie O'Connell, here's a great opportunity. I'm going to dedicate one of our segments to listener questions from the super text line, 615-737-9986. You get them in, and I'll ask them. If you include your name, it'll be better, so I don't have to do the number thing. But one way or the other, we'd love to get your questions in here. Freddie O'Connell with us in the 2 o'clock hour on The Murphy Show. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Good afternoon. It is 2 p.m., and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. We are at 99 degrees on Music Row. A complete forecast is just a minute or two away. All 19 co-defendants in the Georgia election racketeering case have met the midday Friday deadline that was set by Fulton County DA Fannie Willis to turn themselves in. ABC News national correspondent Stephen Portnoy has more on the legal maneuverings of some of those charged alongside Donald Trump.
At least 4 of the 19 defendants are asking a federal judge to move their cases out of state court, arguing they were acting as federal officers when they did whatever it is they're accused by the DA of doing. 2, charged with forgery for claiming to be among Georgia's duly chosen electors, argued they were playing a role created by the U.S. Constitution. Their filings also say they were acting under instructions from the President of the United States. As a result, they say, a county courthouse isn't the right place for charges against them to be heard.
Officials in St. John the Baptist Parish in South Louisiana are working to contain a chemical leak and fire initially reported at a Marathon Petroleum plant just outside Garyville, Louisiana, early this morning. While experts say the leak and fire appear to have been contained to the refinery's property, a state of emergency has been declared by parish leaders, and evacuations for residents within 2 miles of the refinery are underway as a precautionary measure. Air quality is also being monitored. Parish President Jacqueline Hotard says that today they don't expect many residents to be affected by this incident.
We are being assured that all of the impacts are contained to the Marathon site at this time.
That is the latest news. That hot weather forecast is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
All right, here we go. It's 2:05. I welcome this conversation. We've had a couple of them in the past as Freddie O'Connell threw his hat in the ring to become the next mayor of Nashville and Davidson County. He's in studio with us. We had a brief conversation before the news timeout, and you can catch that on the podcast. And we will continue said conversation during the better portion of this hour of the show, and I'm excited about it. How long before it's the 14th of September, right, Freddie?
September 14th. Polls open this morning. Early voting runs through September 9th with a pause on Labor Day for the holiday there. But, otherwise, check vote.nashville.gov for all your early voting and Election Day needs.
I asked someone else this question, and maybe there was a pause in, I guess we would call it the primary, or I don't know how that.
We have it in Nashville because it's nonpartisan. For all of our local races, Metro Council, Vice Mayor, Mayor, we have a general election, and then in anything that's going to come down to a single office holder. I think it's appropriate. You have a runoff election to ensure that somebody gets at least 50% plus one of the vote.
Right.
The at-large races are a little more complicated, and the way that works is, I think it's on the basis if you have 5 positions, so you break it up into 20% buckets. If you get 20% plus one of the vote, you can win a seat. In the general election, my colleague, Councilmember Sawara, was the only council member who got elected at large. So there are 4 seats remaining in that at-large race, and those will now be definitively decided by voters this election, and then a handful of district races.
Why the pause between early voting and the election?
I don't know what the sort of logic is there on the part of that. I'm assuming that's decided by the Davidson County Election Commission.
I would imagine it has something or another to prevent, fraud or something or not. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. It could be just also to give sort of poll workers a break,
maybe.
Right. Because early voting those are long days when the polls are open, and we rely on people coming in and wanting to help out to keep those early voting locations open. So.
What are people telling you is the central issue of this mayoral campaign?
That's maybe the most interesting question of all is we have not locked into one single issue that's top of mind for voters. We have heard schools. We have heard safety. We have heard traffic and transit. We have heard affordable housing. And I will say for us, the thing that we sort of caught some resonance around is this idea of where the city wants to be. Like, are we focused right now on trying to attract tourists? Like, is that our MO as a city, or are we trying to be a great place to live? Are those ideas mutually exclusive? I certainly came into this race believing the pendulum had swung a little bit away from livability and the idea of being a Nashvilleian and a Nashville resident, and more toward, literally, as we had the conversation about the stadium deal, a Vegas-like atmosphere.
You, by the way, Freddie was the only mayoral candidate that offered, that told me that if I'd have told him I was going to Robert's Western World on Broadway, I posted a picture on Twitter, and you said, tell a fella, and I'll come down there.
Yep.
And have a beer with you. But can you have both? And it leads to a question that I wanted to ask you, because some of your ads are kind of poking at the tourists and the bachelorette parties, but they're important too, right? They're important to keep our tax burden low in the city.
So think about it this way, though. I met a woman in Donaldson a few weeks ago who told me that she had fond memories of coming down and parking in Lot R across the river, walking across the pedestrian bridge, and hanging out at Roberts, right? She feels that is very unappealing right now. And this is actually something I had a conversation with former mayor of Chattanooga, Andy Burke, about, which is he said as they were developing their strategy around tourism and attracting people to Chattanooga, some of the best advice they got was, don't have your destinations be things that repel locals. And I don't think that's been top of mind for Nashville here, right? I think that I've even had a Broadway establishment owner say, hey, don't worry about this. These people aren't even from around here. And it's I mean, I think that's.
I mean, I understand. I mean, because I hear. I mean, in the year and a half that I've been here, you hear from. They call themselves the unicorn. Those that have been here forever.
That's me.
And you hear from them, and they say, "Well, the Broadway's changed." That you hear that refrain over and over again. That it's hardened. I hear the comparison to Bourbon Street in New Orleans. How it's hardened, but how do you rein that in without pushing away tourism money that is important to the city?
I think some of it, so there are a couple different things going on down there. There are many owners down there who want the authenticity, the grit, want the Music City to be people literally coming to listen. Right. I mean, it's the old almost cliche of Nashville is you hear somebody in a honky tonk or you hear somebody at the Bluebird before they've got a major label deal. Right. That's a little different than this almost professionalized circuit of performers sort of just, hey, let's go have a bunch of beers and listen to songs we've all heard before. And there's a couple different models, right? I think you've got some people looking at it as, hey, we can almost factory stamp out, slap somebody's name on there and bring people in. That's different from the model of Roberts. And the truth of the matter is investors are finding opportunities to do that. And you can't really change that if they see that as a thing that they want to do. You're not going to tell them, no, don't do this. But we also have a Convention and Visitors Corporation, and we can be very strategic and intentional about what cultural attractions we're highlighting in the city, even which music venues, what kinds of shows our concert bookers can be involved in it. And I think it's worth having music industry conversations. I think it's worth having conversations about who's coming to the convention center. I think it's worth having conversations about what types of visitors we're targeting.
Final thought on that. I was against when I heard that the Metro Council was considering some sort of noise ordinance. I'm a libertarian. I'm automatically against it. It's government overreach. But then I actually heard some of the meat as to what it was going to be. And I may be oversimplifying it a little bit, but it's as simple as speakers have to be turned in toward the establishment, not out toward the street. And to that, I thought, well, okay, that I don't have an issue with that.
So, I mean, Matt, I'll say it this way. My instinct is like yours, where I tend to think you want to have light and limited touches of government and interference in commerce, whatever, people's personal lives. However, in this case, the reason that my attention got focused on this bill and an appropriate, there were stakeholder conversations, and by the end, even among Broadway owners and the Entertainment Association and so forth, most of the people wound up either supporting it or withdrawing opposition from it, because the way it came to anybody's attention in the first place was Chief Drake, our police chief, said we are having serious public safety issues where guys on radios,
police officers, could not communicate with each other.
That's correct. And so that is a legitimate public safety concern. And if it is truly that loud in an outdoor environment, it makes sense to say, hey guys, I know there's been a little bit of an arms race down here around how loud can we be outside to try to attract people inside, but we're truly impacting the ability of our police officers to keep people safe down here.
Toward that end, it leads us to the subject of giving the police department the tools necessary to do the job. And I try not to say things about people when they're not here and not say them to the people when they are here. I respect those that come through these doors enough that I try to do that. And I made the statement about you that Freddie seems to be in favor of license plate readers until it's time to vote for them, and then he votes against them. Help me understand your vote on this matter and where you are on this subject.
Right. So the legislative process is where you try to develop the public policy that you're going to implement. That's very different from the executive branch process where you are working as a partner to the chief of police. It's an executive function. So what I've said all along, and this is how I would do things differently if I were mayor and would have done them differently this year, is I still, as somebody whose background is software and technology, and I've worked in databases and internet, I still have concerns that the policy we developed in leading to this pilot program itself was not sufficiently protective of privacy. And the metaphor I've given is, as a law-abiding citizen, I still don't want to be followed around all day, every day by a patrol car with a dash cam that is looking at all my appointments, looking at all of my meetings, looking at all of my health care. looking at anything I might want to do. I mean, if I've got a cancer diagnosis that I haven't disclosed, if there is a mental health situation in our family, if I'm going through a divorce, if I'm doing anything of a person, I mean, shoot, if you and I are meeting up at Roberts, that may be bad for both of us if that were recorded.
Certainly for you.
So in that light, the way this technology works is it captures whole vehicle, like easily identifiable footage that if you sent over to an increasingly sophisticated AI system, if you had illegal access to it, you could individually track the movements of hundreds of thousands of Nashvillians. I think that has the risk of creating a new class of victims if you don't build guardrails about it. I was in the home stages of this, having new conversations with the FOP, with the mayor's office, where I think there was an increasing recognition of privacy. In fact, if you look at what passed, though it was non-binding, there was an amendment to the extension of the pilot to make it permanent that gave sort of forward-looking guidance that came directly out of those conversations about privacy concerns. If I'm elected mayor, it's not, and that's the hardest part, Matt, is in an up or down vote, I'm trying to hit policy goals that I don't think we hit. But the vote is there. It's kind of like the Titans deal. I was opposed to the stadium deal because I didn't think the quality of the deal was fiscally responsible. I didn't think we hit our goals for a return on public investment we were making, which was the largest in the history of American sports. But I'm going to turn around and make sure the Titans play football there in 2027. I'm not going to unravel that. Similarly, if it's very clear that the police are looking for this tool, I want to have a responsible implementation, but I'm also in both cases. On the Titans deal, we're going to try to hit some of the goals that are in the East Bank Vision Plan, where we look at affordable housing targets. On LPRs, I'm going to absolutely involve the community organizations that raised concerns. I'm going to try to address concerns I've had as a software and IT professional, and we'll have a responsible implementation.
And so is it fair to say then that if Freddie O'Connell is mayor of Nashville, considering that the chief and the Metro Nashville Police Department has expressed their desire to have this tool in their arsenal, that if those concerns, at least your concerns, because frankly, I believe that there will be some community organizations that are never going to be in favor of this deal.
Right. There may be some people that have a 100% hard line. We will never use LPRs.
But if your concerns are met, you're confident that you can we can find ground for LPRs in Nashville?
Right now, today, I am. I mean, I don't love to prejudge outcomes.
I get it.
But yeah, like that's where I think we are headed. Is I'd love to get to a place. I mean, say like a great example. We have a lot of cameras of all kinds in downtown Nashville. That's a concentrated area where there are not only a ton of people, period, but also we generate a ton of requests for service from our Metro Police Department. It is important in that concentrated environment to have additional tools. I'll say, though, along the way, we have made significant and consistent investments in police, from pay, personnel, facilities, and equipment, including technology, from body armor to helicopters to fleet improvements to a new precinct in Southeast Nashville that's coming online. And it is the job of the mayor, the top priority of the mayor is to keep residents safe. Well, to Chief Drake's credit, we are right now, year over year, we have seen declines in most major crime categories, and there are a handful of things where a couple of models of car have been the targets of car theft rings and so forth. But right now, the investments appear to be on track in producing results that are keeping Nashvillians safe.
Chief Drake was recently he offered his thoughts on SROs in elementary schools, saying that because of the lack of numbers going through the academy, because of the number of officers that we are down in Nashville, that he was in agreement to return the $5.25 million in agreement with the Superintendent Battle, in as much as he did not feel like that we could fill those positions. My position was, well, I guarantee you're not going to fill them if you don't try. At the same time, what can you do as mayor, working in concert with the chief, to fill those positions to the point that we can have that conversation about SROs in elementary schools?
Yeah, it's a really important question, because police, for a variety of reasons, some of it is just competition in the job market, and specifically for law enforcement. You may have seen the Tennessee Highway Patrol put substantial raises on the table for state troopers this year. Correspondingly, both the mayor and our chair of budget and finance, Kevin Roten, as we went through this process, were very intent on making sure that we offered extremely competitive pay scales for the Metro Nashville Police Department. I think that was important to be aware of where the market is, including for public law enforcement professionals. And so we are looking at that every year to make sure we're offering competitive pay scales. There's obviously been a lot of conversation about the practice of policing in general across the country that I think has pressurized the job of officers. And so I think one of the things I'm interested in as mayor is what other tools are we missing in our toolkit for recruitment and retention. I've talked to some people about organizations that can help with that. I've talked to some very creative leadership within the departments, commanders and deputy chiefs. I look forward to talking to Chief Drake directly about this, about things that we need in terms of the academy, things that we need in terms of the actual process of HR for police. I mean, you've probably seen some of the buses and bus benches that are, arriving at the airport, looking at those kinds of recruiting materials. But we also need to say, hey, are we taking advantage of relationships with academic institutions, et cetera? I mean, there's a whole toolkit that HR professionals use. I want to make sure we're doing that well.
How would you, and I know I have to take a break, but this is a quick one. How would you grade the performance of the Metro Nashville Police Department? Like like a letter grade? Letter grade.
So it's interesting. I'd probably say I'd say B plus, and we can dig into it after the break if you need.
All right, B plus. Freddie O'Connell's our guest. It's 222 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Belkay, I want you to get Jeff Eddy of Efficient Heating and Cooling on the phone, and I want you to ask Jeff if he can come with me to Nissan Stadium and somehow cool the area directly around my seat this afternoon. Would you do that for me? Thank you.
I don't know if he does personal spaces like that, just industrial and home.
I think if anybody can do it, he can do it. It's Efficient Heating and Cooling. I kid, but Jeff Eddy, I mean, I'm telling you, now's the time that your AC goes out. And I hate it, but statistically it is true. Now, if you think about it, you'll understand the reason. That AC unit is working harder than ever, keeping up with these incredibly hot conditions in Middle Tennessee. And so if there's already a maintenance issue or already a problem, it's going to go out on you. When it does, who are you going to call? I encourage you to call Jeff Eddy in Efficient Heating and Cooling. He is jiffy quick. He's not the biggest in the world. He's simply the best. He's got a tech to come to your home swiftly, and they will solve the issue without trying to upsell you on a new unit. Now, if you need one, they're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric, an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. They offer free financing on your next unit. They don't charge you overtime, nights, or weekends. Why? Because your AC doesn't know what time it is when it goes out. You shouldn't have to pay more because it goes out at 8 o'clock as opposed to at 4 o'clock. Go to efficienthvac.net. That's efficienthvac.net, or call 615-784-4424. And as I like to say, if you're sweaty, call Jeff Eddy in Efficient Heating and Cooling.
An F-18 fighter jet goes down on a training mission, a fire at a Texas prison, and another Army base gets a new name today. Those stories at 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy with Freddie O'Connell. Freddie O'Connell's running for mayor. That election happening on September 14th. Early voting is happening right now for those of you in Davidson County. It's 2:26, about 5 minutes, or no, take that back, 4 minutes, and then we'll have to take a short time out, and then we'll get to some listener questions and whatnot. But you, prior to the break, gave a B+ grade to the Metro Nashville Police Department. You want to expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's like anytime you're getting an end of semester grade, there's a lot that goes into it. A+ on responses to our biggest crises lately, the Covenant school shooting, A+. Bombing on 2nd Avenue, A+. There have been a handful of other episodes where, overall they get an A. But I've also, it's the accountability part. We've had some tough moments where there have been, there was a moment within the past year, actually not far from my home, where there was somebody experiencing crisis, and the response within minutes was to make that a lethal scenario, and we're adjusting because we're increasing the amount of mental health capacity that is available to officers, and I think that is going to result in fewer fatalities in scenarios where it's not like somebody's in the process of committing a violent crime, a property crime, etc.
Just so I understand what you're saying is that an officer had to use lethal force, which was determined to be justified, but you would look for ways to try to prevent having to go there.
Is that fair? Right. It's like de-escalation from somebody in crisis who's not committing a crime, but that the officer judges that's a situation that needs to be contained, right? And so there have been a handful of those scenarios. I'm still interested in putting some pressure on. And this is where we as a city, again, have to make sure the resources are appropriate. But, there have been some issues with that intersection of communication with the community, response times, and those kinds of things that we've been through. And I will look at most of this and say, there are some scenarios where it is A+ work, no notes. And there are some scenarios where it's like, hey, we've got a little bit of work to do, but we know that there's a lot of willingness to improve.
Did you support the police chief when he noted that he was turning down the $5.25 million in money that would be dedicated to SROs in elementary schools because of he feels like he does not have enough officers this was his case that he made, that we don't have enough officers now. It would be irresponsible to take the money. My strong stance on that is, well, you're never going to make it happen if you don't try. And I think this is an important enough issue on the heels of Covenant to get some SROs in schools.
I was a little surprised by that because my feeling was, and we know that there's some things on the table that are going to be personnel intensive, right? Opening a new police precinct takes a lot of personnel, right? That's not an instant release of new officers on the streets, on beats. That's a lot of administrative staff that is creating a new building. And so it's a new facility in the community that is going to require appropriate staffing levels, not all of whom are going to be engaged in active policing as we think of it. That's personnel intensive. The Entertainment District Initiative downtown is personnel intensive, and that's on top of the existing vacancies that come through resignations and retirements, right? There's a little bit of natural churn in the police department, which is one of the larger departments within Metro. I'm not, it wasn't like I got asked, but I would have wanted to have the conversation to say, well, what would this look like? What would it take to be able to get to that place where you would say we should accept this money? And how much of this was already a conversation with schools? Because the other view on this is, if this isn't already, hey, everybody agrees, mayor's office, school district, police department agrees that this is the right place, then is that useful? But it caught me a little bit by surprise.
I want to ask you about the relationship between the school system and the mayor's office when we come back, and whether, how you view that relationship, because a lot of these decisions are made on the part of the school board. And that's outside of the mayor's office to a certain degree, as I understand it. So we'll do that again with Freddie O'Connell. Plus your questions coming up. It is 2:31 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 2:31, and I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Yes, we have reached 100 degrees on this Friday. We'll have a complete forecast in just a few minutes. An F-18 Marine fighter jet operating out of Marine Corps Air Station Miramar on an overnight training mission went down in a remote area on military property last night. A defense official has confirmed with ABC News that the pilot has perished. The cause of the crash is under investigation. Approximately 655 inmates were evacuated from their cells early this morning from the Texas State Prison in Huntsville after a fire reportedly broke out inside an attic of one of the cell blocks and of one of the prison's administration buildings. No injuries reported. The cause of that fire is unknown at this time. And another Army base received a new name today. Fort Walker is the new name of the military installation in Northern Virginia that was known as Fort A.P. Hill. The official redesignation honors Dr. Mary Walker, who treated Union soldiers back during the Civil War. That is some of the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
The Tennessee Men's Clinic has just opened a second location in Cool Springs in Franklin, Tennessee. They're already for almost 30 years now have had their location in Midtown Nashville. Look, I understand when you hear the commercials about Tennessee Men's Clinic, it often goes to, I like to call it bedroom activity. Gentlemen, know this. There's no shame in this game that half of the men listening to me will experience some sort of issue in that regard over the course of their lifetime. And most men wait years before they deal with it because there's a lot of factors involved. Particularly, you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to address it. I tell you to talk about it and address it because it could be simple as getting your T level up to where it ought to be. Naturally, these things decline with time, and then you can get back to that good lifestyle. Now, it's more than that. It's about energy levels. It's about getting out in the yard. It's about gains at the gym. It's about keeping up with the kids or the grandkids. That's what's important to me. Keep that energy level where it should be, and don't just say, well, I'm 50. That's what happens when you're 50. No, it doesn't have to be that way. Go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com online, TennesseeMen'sClinic.com, or give them a call, 615-208-9090, 208-9090. Tell them Murphy sent you to Tennessee Men's Clinic. Hey, friends, Defend Systems is a safety and security and life-saving organization in Middle Tennessee. Many of you know Brink Fiddler. You know that I've had Brink on the show on multiple occasions, and Brink has been in charge with protecting those in group settings for a while. He served almost 20 years in the Metro Nashville Police Department, and in those 2 decades, he planned and conducted over 1,000 high-risk law enforcement tactical operations, giving him firsthand information and involvement in defeating security measures and technologies. Now he's reversed that, and he can help you. If you are a church organization, if you're a school group, if you are a law firm, any place that people gather, especially a business operation, you need Brink in your life. Allow him to come in and individually customize some training for your facility that will deal with emergency and intruder action plans. I always like to say this when I do when I talk about Brink Fiddler and Defend Systems, that the odds of you being in a workplace violence situation are extremely low. A shooting situation, extremely low, but they're not zero, and hope is not a plan. In a dangerous world, it's time to get trained. It's time to call Defend Systems. DefendSystems.com or 615-236-6484, 236-6484. All right, we've got, about 10 more minutes with Freddie O'Connell. He's running for mayor. We've been trying to cover the mayor's race more comprehensively than anyone else in Middle Tennessee, and I think we're doing our jobs. I promised that I would get to some of your some of your super text questions, and I'm going to do that in just a moment. I'm going to run down my final question or two with Freddie O'Connell, and then we'll get to some of those. Let me get some clarity. Aren't you proud of me, by the way? It's been like 40 minutes and I haven't brought up the racetrack yet. Aren't you proud of me?
That's, we're making surprisingly good time in that regard.
I am on record, and I have a feeling you're going to think this is completely unfair. I'm on record as saying that if Freddie I've said it, so I'll say it to you, that if Freddie O'Connell is your next mayor, I do not believe the renovation project is happening at the fairgrounds. Is that an unfair statement?
I would call that an unfair statement, yes.
Tell me what you would do as mayor to make this a reality.
So we still have progress to make, in my view. We didn't get to a fully baked deal. I think the biggest conversations to have are, what is the appropriate size for the racetrack venue? I'll say it this way. I am a speedway defender. I grew up listening to the sounds of those cars from my parents' house. I think it's actually a really great artifact of Nashville's history at a century-old plus fairgrounds to have a speedway. And there is no question that it's not serving anybody's interest for it to fall into a dilapidated state. So the question is, what is the size of the facility that you create there? What is the racing series that allows? And then effectively, how do you fund that? Because it is a public facility right now. And so what is the mix of public and private funding there to make that viable? And then, again, there's maybe a fourth category of, how do you address community concerns?
Do you or were you concerned at what I perceived as a slow walk on the issue? I mean, the counselor in question, Colby Sledge, has to call a public hearing.
Yeah.
It seemed that there was a 5-month span of time when a public hearing could have been called that it wasn't. And it felt to me, Freddie, that, and I don't know Colby, so I'll let him answer to his motivations, but it felt like it was intentionally being delayed until such time as you couldn't have 3 readings at the present council.
Over the course of the term, I was actually maybe more surprised by the pace of the arrival of the Titans deal. And I think there was a lot of question of, at some point, I think some people involved in both were like, well, should NASCAR go first because that might get done faster? I don't know. But it surprised me that we didn't even really start discussing the stadium deal in earnest until about December of 2022, right? And then and that's when we kind of got...
You feel like the racetrack took a back seat to the stadium at that point?
Absolutely. And I think that's... So I'll say, I think it would, given the amount of information, it's not impossible, but, I don't know if you happen to take a look through the East Bank Stadium Committee information, the Q&A and all of this stuff. There was a ton of... It
was like that thick.
It was right. Yeah. And so to chew through that and then simultaneously be trying to process and not nearly as big. But I mean, it's like if the stadium is this big, the $160 million deal at the fairgrounds is not a small project either. So.
And then quickly before I get to, as promised, listener questions, the issue of property taxes has become a conversation point. Your opponent, Alice Rowley, says no additional property taxes.
She's taken a pledge.
She's taken a firm stance there. You have not done so.
No.
You've spoken to this before on the show. I want you to speak to it again.
So, one, let's start here. You don't just talk about taxes. Right. And, to talk about taxes ignores the reason that the revenue side of a balance sheet exists. It's because you're trying to capture revenue to put into public investments. If we know we're going to have a police force, if we know we're going to have a public school system with teachers, if we know we're going to have a Department of Transportation in charge of roads and sidewalks, if we know we're going to have any kind of approach to affordable housing that's staffed, all of those things that's the expense side of the balance sheet. If you're not talking about the things you want to invest in, and all you're saying is we're going to stick with the revenue we have, and I mean that's the question of living within our means. Well, what happens when inflation occurs? What happens when it's clear that personnel need cost of living adjustment? What happens when we just, opened a new Goodlettsville Elementary School in partial response to literally the roof collapsing at the old Goodlettsville Elementary? I want to be in a position to make appropriate investments and have that conversation with
How
voters.
does that jive with the idea of affordable housing, though? I mean, I understand. I mean, based on what you just said, I don't suppose that's something you would want to do. But at the same time, when we talk about affordable housing, that's a part of the conversation too, right?
So it is, but I'll go back to we had a couple of timing issues. The last time we went into a no new taxes scenario, we started digging a fiscal hole. And unfortunately, the time that was chosen to dig out of the fiscal hole was in the middle of a pandemic. And that's when the choice was made to issue the biggest property tax rate increase in the history of Metro, which I tried to stop by a substitute budget that lowered that dramatically, and then amending the budget that was there to try to keep at least a moderate tax rate in place. And the reason for that is because...
So you were a part of the fight to lower the, whatever it was, 33-34% threshold down?
2 different times, yes.
And obviously you
did
were
not succeed.
You were not successful. All right, let me get to as many as I can. Someone needs to ask him what he's going to do about the homeless situation in Nashville. And you just did 6181.
There you go. So this is one of the most important things that we've got going forward. But I'll say it is one of the things that I'm also cautiously optimistic about. So we have a homelessness planning council here in the city that a few years ago we brought our federal process into greater alignment with our local process. I was a part of leading that. It's a big deal. We've got better data about our homeless population than we've ever had. That was from an oversight committee process that I chaired. And Mayor Cooper chose to use $50 million of our one-time federal money to try to tackle this more effectively by creating a tool for public-private partnerships that will house the community that's most difficult to house, offer some temporary housing for those people who suddenly find themselves out of a home. Like there's this process called rapid rehousing where you try to make sure that nobody stays homeless for more than 30 days. There are some supports in there for services and security for this population. And if we use that money wisely and have an updated strategic community plan, which that is a process in place, and if we stay in touch with that homelessness planning council, whose recommendations were ignored through most of COVID, we should have good responses to encampments. We should have more people moving into housing, getting the services they need. And I think there's a real opportunity to segment places where we know that illegal activity is occurring, whether that's property crimes, drugs, et cetera, and making sure that we are keeping law enforcement active in those scenarios, but also recognizing that the people facing the greatest challenges from a financial, mental health, addiction standpoint are getting the services they need in the housing that they've got available.
A few rapid fire, and I hate to go rapid fire because some of these are complex, but several listeners want me to follow up and ask you, given the amount of money offered by the state, if you were mayor, do you generally support if we have the personnel, SROs in elementary schools?
So I would say I am willing to support it, but as an elementary school parent myself, it is not the thing that is for me the number one priority from a school safety standpoint. So I would say it this way. If we can get to alignment with Dr. Battle, Chief Drake, I'm going to participate in that. And so, yes.
Does Freddie support a 20-member Metro Council?
I don't support the state forcing us to have a 20-member Metro Council. If I were to go to ballot, I was someone who thought we hit kind of a sweet spot on the last referendum of a 27-member council with up to 3 terms. That seemed like a great opportunity to kind of revisit this issue 50 years into Metro's history. I think it's important to have that as a local conversation, though, and not be forced into it by the state.
How many police does the Metro Nashville Police Department need? I guess he's asking about, in total. And who determines that?
So that, to me, is a determination that should be made by Chief Drake, and it should be like other Metro department heads who look at this stuff. If you look at our CEO of our transit system, if you look at, Metro schools, et cetera, it's kind of like asking how many teachers do we need. I'm not going to try to tell you what that appropriate staffing level is. I'm going to look at Chief Drake's budget request with seriousness. And ideally, we're going to go back to something we started working on 8 years ago and not just say, hey, let's do this on a year-over-year basis, but let's look at a 4-year spending plan, an investment plan, and say, where do we need to be in FY25, and then where do we need to be by the end of 4 years, and what is our overall plan to get there? And again, this ties right back into why I'm not going to zero in on a Norquist tax pledge as my primary philosophy of governing.
Would you be in favor of a congestion zone in the lower Broadway area?
I don't think we can legally do that. I think I've never seen us.
I'm assuming that's to discourage personal vehicles from being.
That's right.
That
I
way.
think the better way to approach this is the thing that is in our comprehensive transportation plan, which I do intend to pursue, which is we are more than a decade behind. Just like we're behind on a transit system, we're equally behind on a modern traffic management system that allows traffic signals to be aware of where our congestion is. If we did actual congestion management, and if we did some amount of transportation demand management where employers and special events projects and all these people looked at how to move people around the city, it's the same thing that Vanderbilt University and VUMC do right now. And they have worked hard on this to balance parking needs with when people are arriving there for faculty, staff, and students versus patients and doctors and healthcare providers and so forth. That kind of model can be very effective, and I think I'd rather move in that direction than congestion management for now. And my first question about that would be, is it even legal?
And the was circling back to the beginning with 0370, who I think just got here a little while ago, and ask him about mask mandates and lockdowns.
Okay. I mean, this comes back to something we had a conversation about earlier.
Right.
I was never supportive of mask mandates. I took a lot of flack for my position on that from people who were strongly supportive of mask mandates. I actually vocally opposed a couple of mask mandate provisions that came to the Metro Council. It is
as a civil liberties issue.
Honestly, I think more as it's not a.
It didn't work. I mean,
so a
masking,
mandate. So
right.
Go back to where we were, and this is exactly what I predicted. If you issue that particular mandate, good luck enforcing it. It is as much a lesson in, yes, politics and social behavior as it is in public health. If you talk to a public health professional, you're going to know that a fitted N95 mask, which is the kind that you will see at a hospital, is very good protection if you walk into a room where a patient has tuberculosis. If we needed to protect the population at scale, there are things that we should consider. And yes, on multiple occasions, I wore a mask because they can be personally effective at lowering risk. But the other thing that we never did was invest seriously in the air we already share by trying to reduce viral load in buildings. There are a lot of other approaches to that. But I'll say, too, right now, today, given where the state of COVID is and us living with it as a society, not just in America, but globally, I am not seeing any indications. Yes, I've been a sort of a victim of a recent spike in activity, but I also I have been comfortable, generally speaking, this year being in most of the public service scenarios that I exist in without feeling like I needed to wear a mask personally.
Freddie had COVID last week, and I'm not wearing a mask. That's all I know.
Yeah, well.
And no, you're good. You're all good. You
never
got
had a fever. I'm out of isolation.
You're fine. And final question from me is, should you be elected mayor, will you, not necessarily make it a priority, but will you agree to come on forums like this one, specifically this one, and speak on occasion to the people of Davidson County and beyond regarding things that would come up in the mayor's office? Are you willing to keep those channels of communication open?
Absolutely not. At least not without a promise of beer. So no, you know my number. I'm easy to reach.
About as honest as it gets.
Save cut everything he said after absolutely not. So when he does something awful and everybody's yelling and screaming, I can't get him on. Listen to what he said. Look, we'll have a beer next time.
All right,
How about
good
that?
deal.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's Freddie O'Connell joining us for the better part of an hour. We'll wrap things up in just a sec.